Hello and welcome to Tokyo Inklings. My name is CY and you can find me on my website at tokyostationpens.com, on Instagram and TikTok at tokyostationpens, and on Twitter at tokyostationmnh.
And my name is Jacob. I am Foodie Fan on Instagram and on TikTok and wherever else I signed up.
And this is episode 72. Welcome. Surprise recording on a Wednesday. We usually don't do this. But obviously we had some scheduling difficulties, just around work schedule. It's the end of the year. It's the end of the quarter. You and I both, you probably more busy than me. But I think safe to say, both fairly busy. I actually just landed from Fukuoka, yesterday, back to Tokyo. The weekend before I was in Kanazawa. So, and then the weekend before I went to Kyoto. So it's been a huge kind of whirlwind end of the quarter. For me, I've been doing more traveling in the last 60 days than I have had in the last, 3 years. So that's definitely kept me on my toes. And Jacob, I know that you've been super busy as well, as we were just talking about it before the show.
Yeah. So when you say travel, is that pleasure, or is it your day job, or is it your pen business?
I mean, Japan's borders opened late October, and ever since then there have been people saying that they want to come to Japan, and they want me to take them around. So, I had ex-colleagues come. Which is weird because it's the first time I'm actually seeing them in real life. I have, my mother came for about 16, 17 days. And so, I was taking her around as well. So some of them were for pen business. Some of them were for private. I wouldn't say that a lot of it isn't relaxing, but it isn't necessarily because I decided, let's, go to Fukuoka. A lot of it is because there were people coming to Japan. So yeah, it was, it's been a tiring few weeks here, but that means, people like us haven't really had time to think about anything else. We might not have done all of our holiday shopping.
Exactly, yes. I had this idea here about doing a gift guide. I don't think we've done that in the past, but I think Pen Addict did that recently. Now, this is admittedly very last minute. I mean, we're recording on December 21st, so assuming we get to finish editing and publishing it today or tomorrow, it may be mildly useful to someone, but it could still be a fun thing to do. So my idea is that we have like a budget of like ballpark 5,000 yen-ish. Doesn't need to be exactly that. And if you had a few different categories. So my first category is a gift for someone who is into stationery, into, standard pens, hasn't really gotten into fountain pens yet, but could potentially be someone who may be enjoying a fountain pen. So this would be kind of like a starter kit or something to get someone hooked on fountain pens, basically, for roughly 5,000 yen. So what would you pick?
Yeah, so this is the last minute gift guide. That's hard. I think that really puts us squarely into the steel nib range. Unless it was a limited edition or something like that, I wouldn't necessarily go for like a secondhand thing, even though if it was for myself, I totally would. But I think, we're looking probably at a steel nib. On this one, I think I'd like to go with the Pilot Lightive. Have you heard of this pen before?
Yeah, it's called like Explorer I think it was launched in the US or in the West like 1 or 2 years ago as Explorer, and now it recently came to Japan as Lightive for some reason.
Yeah, and so wouldn't be a Tokyo Inklings show if we wouldn't go on a tangent about why this name is absolutely insane. But we've spoken quite a lot about how Japanese companies are just absolutely terrible at naming their products. And lightive is the combination of light and active. There you go. And the reason why it's light and active is because they want you to always have it while you are on the go. So mochi aruite hoshii toyu negai. So their desire is that it's such a light pen that's active and you can take it wherever you go, kind of like a full-size pocket pen. Now, the reason why I chose this is because it's actually surprisingly got quite a few variations. So it's got, let me see, 6 different color variations, from this bright yellow, which I think is quite fun, all the way to even a demonstrator. And as we know, the Con 40 obviously works, but this fits the Con 70. Now they call it the Con 70N because they've improved on that. And it's just very, very nice. It's a snap cap, steel nib. We've talked about how Pilot steel nibs are also very good, I believe. Comes in F and M, and it's just a generally lightweight pen for somebody who might not be used to a heavier fountain pen. It only costs 2,200 yen. And it's got enough colors to be playful. It's got a Stormtrooper variation. And I think it generally is quite a handsome pen. You wouldn't look out of place in it, even in a meeting, if you have one of the more muted colors like a black or even the white. Even the yellow looks okay in a Japanese meeting, I think. So, for me, the choice is the lightive, and I chose it over the Kakuno because the Kakuno, I feel like, does look a little bit childish. It's a great pen, don't get me wrong, but it does look like it is for children. And the Prera has that ring on the front, near the nib, so that might rust eventually. And it's also a little bit more expensive. The other one would be the Cocoon, which I believe is the Metropolitan in the US, and that one is also 1,000 yen more expensive. So, yeah, I think that the lightive, it's just the perfect balance between the Kakuno and some of the higher end pens. So, for example, like the 74, which would be a entry level pen for people who've been into fountain pens, but not necessarily one for somebody who's never used a fountain pen.
Okay, so you mentioned Con 70, so it doesn't come with a Con 70, right? You would have to buy that separately, right?
You would have to buy that, but like all of Pilot's pens, they also take the cartridge. So I think somebody who's never used a converter or never used a fountain pen before, they're probably going to start off with cartridges. I mean, I started off with cartridges. Jacob, I don't know if you started off with cartridges, but I think that's fairly reasonable. And that's another reason I think why you should choose Pilot, because now they have the different Iroshizuku inks in cartridges too. So I think there's just a lot of options for you to choose from. And Pilot makes good products.
That's interesting. I mean, I have almost exactly the same idea as you had, but instead of lightive, I would say Prera. And my thinking here is that, what is interesting about using fountain pens? I think that lists 3 things. You have nib variety, you have ink variety, as you mentioned, and you have filling system variety. I think for filling systems, at least as far as Japanese pens are concerned, you can't really get any piston filler or vac filler for in the price range we're talking about. So you would have to go with some Chinese pens, which I think might be a bit too adventurous for a starter kit. So, and I agree with what you're saying, that people tend to start out with cartridges, and for that reason I would also go with Iroshizuku cartridges. The reason why I would choose a Prera over a lightive is that you can get a Prera with a stub nib, what they call it, the CM calligraphy nib, and I think that might, get you a bit more hooked on a fountain pen as wow, I have it. This is something different than the ballpoint experience.
But just questioning here, but the Prera, I believe, only takes the Con 40, right? And I think, or rather, this is a question to you. Do you think that the difficulties in filling a Con 40 might turn somebody off of filling with converters to begin with?
I think that's a possibility. I know for myself that I have, for example, this Pilot Silvern that I don't even though I always enjoy using it, I always hesitate to ink it up because I don't like to use Con 40. I mean, there's definitely that's definitely a thing, and whenever I use my Capless, I tend to use a cartridge instead of, because I can't be bothered to use Con 40. That is definitely a thing, but if you get someone hooked on a Prera, I think they might start exploring other pens before they find out about the Con 40, maybe. I'm not sure. So this is more about getting someone hooked on, or to see what a stub nib is about, what interesting ink is about, and then they can continue to explore the exciting world of fountain pens.
That's fair. Out of curiosity, what color of the Prera would you choose for them?
Well, so you have the standard opaque colors, and then you have the Edo Eye series with
Yep.
And I think here where you have to take the person's personality into account to see what color would be suitable.
Yeah. So the CM only comes in the Edo Eye colors, I believe. So yeah, I mean you've got a bunch of colors to choose from. Yeah, I think the black would still look pretty good in a meeting room. I'm not sure about the transparent pink, but I think of the black and the clear black that would look in place anywhere, right?
Yeah, I agree. And another thing I like about the Prera is that the snap cap is so incredibly satisfying.
Yeah,
this is a bit of a tangent, but that's something we talked about before, and I keep saying that I wish that Pilot would do season limited or all kinds of limited editions based on the Prera, because it's such a good starting point. It's such a good pen, and whenever I use a Prera, I also wonder why I even bother with other pens. But you don't really have. There's no desire to buy a whole bunch of them because they're always available, and unless you. There must been one the Oeste green one. Other than that, there hasn't been any limited editions that I'm aware of. But I think this would be the perfect canvas for limited editions.
And we used to know somebody who has hundreds of pens and only uses the Preppy, right?
I think it was a V pen Varsity. You can refill it if you are very determined.
Yeah, he who shall not be named. Anyway, so I think that's pretty good for the first category, for somebody who's never used a fountain pen.
Yeah.
What about for somebody who's a seasoned fountain pen fan?
Yeah, so the idea here is someone who has either owns or has tried pretty much everything you can find at Itoya and Morrison. It knows Pilots line up, Sailors line up, and wouldn't be really be surprised about most of those models. So you need something a bit more exotic, something more off the beaten path. Not necessarily more expensive, but just something more exotic. My idea here is to go with either an urushi, an affordable urushi coated pen, which sounds like an oxymoron, but garage fountain pen, and you have Mart, and you have whoever's making those Nuruno Kakunos, so something like that, which tend to be around 5,000 yen range, at least some of them, or a Eric Deco Kakuno if you can still find those for sale.
Yeah, but isn't that a little bit over budget? Because I recall I think the Deco Kakunos are 8,000, and then the Mart Urush is about 10,000.
Last time I bought the Deco Kakuno, it was 5,000 yen, so I haven't checked the latest prices. So that's
okay. All right. Yeah, inflation, man, it's
yes,
hitting us all.
That's true.
That's interesting. Why would you go that route?
Only because it's something you don't really find in a normal retail store. It's something that it's a one of a kind. No two pens are exactly the same, and it's still affordable enough to be a gift.
That's very interesting. I would actually not get them a pen at all.
Okay.
I would get them a book, because I think a lot of people are, buying is easy in a way, right? Like, you just have to spend money. But I think sometimes these books, especially, I'm looking at some right here in front of me. We have Mane's Chronicle, which is the Fountain Pen Chronicles. This is a classic Japanese fountain pen book. There's Mane's Bible, which is Itoya's fountain pen book. Like, these books talk about the history of fountain pens, talk about, for example, in Mane's Bible, it talks more closely about Itoya's history, and also has very detailed kind of descriptions and pictures of pilots' nib making process, for example. Like, these books are something that I think a seasoned fountain pen fan might have a bunch of different pens. Now they're really more into that, that deep end, let's say. They're really into the hobby. Something simple like a book about pens, about Japanese pen history, that could be very interesting. And I'm sure that a lot of people, even in our group, don't necessarily have these pens or these books. Another kind of book you could get is, for example, like a calligraphy book. I have in front of me Tegami no kotoba to moji. So if you were to write a letter, how do you form your letters? This one is in Japanese, but there are some that exist in English as well. So I think products that help them use their pens, that's what I would go for.
Yeah, that's an interesting choice. I thought you would say Lambros books, but they are a lot more than 5,000 yen at least. They are very expensive.
No. I'm not that high end yet.
But yeah, you're right. And I mean, Meteor has these calligraphy books that are sold everywhere, and those seem to be doing well. Of course, I mean, he has really kickstarted this whole like monoline lettering trend. So that could be something. Yeah, I mean, that's a good gift option.
And what would be really cool is one of those the one with the ink from I think it's just called ink actually, but the one with like thousands of swatches that Ishban did. I mean, that could be pretty cool too.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Those are pretty nice.
Yeah, and if the recipient is a plotter user, you can even get them that pull-out thing that I think they're selling at Maruzen for about 2,000 yen.
That's true.
Yeah. So, my last point here is I want to avoid getting pens for people who use a lot of pens, because it's always really difficult to know somebody's preferences, and you want somebody to use your present, right? You don't want it to just sit on the shelf. So I always hesitate, and I personally really don't like it when people buy me pens, because they're probably not going to get, either I already have it, or they're not going to get something that I like or I will use. And I did get a fountain pen a couple years back, actually, before we met. I was kind of graduating university, let's say, and some of my kohai, they knew I liked pens, and they got me this pen, and I didn't know it at the time, but it was one of these like Indian pens. Like, pretty sure it was the same maker as, it's the same model as whatever Noodler's pens does, and this pen smelled like rotten eggs if you left it for too long. It was absolutely nasty. I put it in like baking powder for years that didn't get rid of the smell. Like, literal years, like almost 10 years now. Still there. It smelled like donkey poo. I swear. And so that was the last time somebody got me a fountain pen. So maybe I'm a bit traumatized.
Well, I think you can buy a pen to someone who is already into fountain pens, but I agree that you need to know that person better, their preferences better. I mean, if you just think that this person is into fountain pens, let me go and buy them a fountain pen, right? That might be a miss, more likely than a hit, right? But if you really understand that person's preferences, and I think there's a chance you can find something that they will be happy with.
Yeah. So maybe that's like it depends on whether you are also a fountain pen person, I suppose, the
exactly.
gift giver.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, if you don't know about fountain pens, don't get them a fountain pen.
Fully agree. I have some trauma around that as well. Yeah, I know what you mean. I agree.
Well, what are your traumas? Without naming names.
Yeah, there was someone who bought at the full retail price. There was some Italian pen. The presentation was very elaborate. They clearly spent a lot of money on a pen that wasn't really that's interesting, but the packaging was, the selling point rather than the pen itself. So I sort of felt a bit bad about that.
Yeah. I definitely see that, especially with some Italian pens. Yeah. All right, next category, shall we?
Yeah, so the idea here is that someone who's really hardcore into ink, and doesn't really matter if it's a fountain pen or like a felt tip pen or a glass pen or a steel dip pen. It's more like the ink is in focus. They really love ink, but they might not necessarily have full access to all the cool ink stuff you can get in Japan. So what would you get to such a person?
My question before we start this is, does this product still have to be in production?
I get the impression that you have an interesting answer that might be difficult to get. So let's hear that one too.
Why don't you go first? You go first.
Assuming they're not in Japan, have access to everything here, I would get and send or give them a Sailor Hokora, which I think is probably the most interesting and best dip pen. At least the second generation with that ink reservoir, and it's just like 1,500 yen. My other thinking is that if they are already into ink, they probably already have some kind of glass pen. So what I would get is a really hilarious Kakimori product I will just send you a link to right now. So this is like a toothbrush, but specially made or meant for glass pen cleaning. I think it's just hilarious. I'm not sure if it's any better for ink cleaning or for glass pen cleaning than any regular toothbrush, but the humor value alone makes it worth it. The third thing I would add to the gift is one of those ink cards which are becoming very popular, and in particular there's this category now of ink cards where, not sure if you've seen that, where something is already printed on the card, like an illustration or something, but it's printed on some kind of glossy white, so you don't see it at first, but as you apply ink, with a brush pen or whatever, that pattern emerges, and those seem to be very popular. I mean, there's one by Bechori, there's one by Moe, and a few different ones. So I think that could be a fun gift.
Yeah, I agree. I've had some of these. I mean, Tonolim's really good at doing that stuff. So they have a bunch for their Christmas parties or whatever parties. Speaking of Tonolims, they already have all of their events for H1 planned and published, which I think is incredible. But yeah, I mean it's pretty cool. I agree. I think that's a great selection. I would actually go in a different direction, but similar to you, not necessarily getting them the pens or the inks themselves. I would look at paper actually. So there are still some places that have old Tomoe River paper. I'd get them, maybe 2 notebooks of this Tomoe River FP68 GSM. Should last them quite a while. And if this Ink Numa have never used, or, if you're just getting into Numa, that really depends. But if you've never used Tomoe River, especially the thicker versions, I would definitely get that. I was thinking maybe some other types of papers like that slight white or some of the other ones that we talked about. Those might be interesting as well. But if it's available to me, I would probably try to get that Tomoe River 68 GSM, just because it shows ink very well, and I think not all papers necessarily show ink in the same way. So, or maybe I'd get a bunch of paper and just cut them up and make my own sampler pack for them. I think that I've done that before, and I think that would be pretty interesting for the Ink Numa as well.
That's interesting. I mean, I agree that paper is a good option. Personally, if it was an Ink Numa, I would go for Takasago Premium Bank paper. Not because it necessarily shows off, chroma shading or, sheen as well as, Graphilo and others, but because everything always looks different enough on Takasago Premium that it's just fun to just use it for comparison.
Yeah, and I think what'll be cool is because they're mostly buying it or they're mostly into this because of the visual aspect, right? Just showing people how visually things can be different. I think that would be pretty cool. Another idea that I had was to get one of those smaller Toyota craft trays, just in case they didn't have a place to hold all of their ink / or dip / glass pens. And I think you can get some at Maruzen for a fairly good price within the budget, right?
Yeah, but if you're talking about Toyota trays for glass pens, the one where you have like one wooden part for the nib, I think those are only sold at events, maybe even only at tips.
I don't think necessarily we need to do that route, but I think the smaller three pen rest, that's not necessarily something that you would buy for yourself.
Right.
And the Toyota tray is really high quality. So, obviously you'd have to clean them before you put them into the tray. But when they're on the table, you have them on display, I think the person will feel really good.
Yeah, that's true. The only caveat, if you go to Maruzen and try to buy a Toyota tray, you'll find that they're not actually called Toyota at Maruzen.
That's right.
They have rebranded them. I can't remember. Mori something.
Yes, some Shinrin something.
Yeah.
But that's my vote.
Yeah, it's a good one. Okay, so the next category is someone who is like really into planners, Techo, Kaigi, and has Hobonichi, plotter, traveler's notebooks, all of that stuff.
I have a question. Does this person live in Japan?
You're giving it to someone who is outside Japan, so you have access to all the products in Japan, but you're giving it to someone who's not here.
Okay. So, you can't necessarily buy this last minute, but I would try to find some interesting rubber stamp sets for them. And that's where an event like Bunga Joshi really shines, because they're usually quite affordable, and it's right, at the end of November. So I'll try to find some of that. But if you're looking at something that you can readily buy in the store, that's a little bit more difficult. I think there's a store here in Kuramae called MT Factory, I believe, where you can get an assortment of really cute and unique washi tape. So you can get more than one, but you can make like a set of 5 or 6. That's still within the budget. And they have some really cool ones. So they have like some 3-dimensional ones where there's like this felt thing coming out of it. They have like these really interesting patterns. And they have different types of tape as well. So tape that you use as like packaging tape, Yojo tape. So these things that I think they probably already have, washi tape, but because you can make a combination of them, it's likely that you can get something that they don't already have.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that's me. How about you?
So I have sort of two paths here. The first path is that someone is already into like system planners, mainly plotter if it's outside Japan. So that they have bought their first plotter. They got the standard plotter refills, but they haven't really explored, the papers. For you, paper was the previous category. I'm gonna go for paper in this category. So I will go for, say, Da Vinci's bamboo paper refills. I will go for Kameterior's paper sampler. I will go for Itoya's, the funny, like the ramen holic and sauna holic and the fun quirky refills like that. And there is something called like Sora Moyo, which is this refills with like cloud patterns and like bubble patterns, which are ideal for ink swatches.
Yeah.
So this is all assuming that they have a plot or any other system binder. If they're instead more into like Traveler's notebooks, I would just go down to Traveler's factory in Tokyo Station and get whatever like Tokyo specific, inserts and other accessories I can get for 5,000 yen.
Yeah, and I think there are also very affordable, non-plotter branded system tetras that you can buy.
Yeah.
So you can even buy that and a set of couple papers to introduce somebody who doesn't necessarily have a plotter but is thinking about it.
Yeah, it makes sense too. Yeah, I think that there's some affordable Da Vinci ones in particular with like faux leather that are like roughly in this price range. That's a good one.
Yeah. So I added a last category to this. So for a calligrapher in your life, these people aren't necessarily fountain pen users, but they like to do the art of calligraphy. Maybe they've not really experienced a fountain pen, because a fountain pen could be, very well as expensive as their entire year's worth of calligraphy, tools. So a last minute gift idea for them. Personally, I'm going back to your prayer idea, right? That calligraphy medium nib. I think a lot of calligraphers don't necessarily know that an option like this exists. So maybe that plus some of those tonal limbs shimmer essence, the shimmer potions, so that they can add glitter to whatever ink they're using. Usually in straight calligraphy, there's a lot more hoops. So I think this additive shimmer thing that they can add into whatever ink, that would be an interesting option.
Interesting. I would have the same problem here that we were talking about the non-fountain pen person trying to buy a fountain pen. I'm not really a calligrapher, so I'm afraid of buying something to a calligrapher. So I would probably go more for the fountain pen ink route. So I'll probably again go back to a Hokuro. Maybe I'll get one Hokuro with Fude, one Hokuro with a stub, and that would be around like 3,000 yen. Have enough 2,000 yen left to buy one of those very popular color changing inks, which seems to be the latest and greatest trend here.
Yeah, I think those are excellent choices.
That's our not terribly useful gift guide, because A, it's too late, and B, we're sort of talking about products that you can mostly only buy in Japan. But
well, it's especially too late because you're expecting us to give these to people who live outside of Japan.
Yeah. Maybe for next year. We're 1 year early. We're early.
That's right. All right. Let's shift gears. I hope you don't mind me moving the order of the show notes, but Jacob, I've noticed that you're not using your pens, or you're not using your fountain pens as often recently.
Ah, yeah. So I have turned to the dark side. I have a red Kyber crystal now. So
what's going on? What's going on?
yeah, so I think what happened was that I had to fill out some paperwork in the office, and I needed a ballpoint for that, and I didn't have any ballpoints on me, so I just went down to the local convenience store and picked up, I think it was like a Zebra blend or something, and I was just genuinely surprised about how nice that pen was. It wasn't nearly as dry as I think I expected ballpoints to be, and had this very satisfying tactile knock, and that maybe start exploring a little bit this world of standard pens. And what I come to really enjoy is how much there is, at least for me, to explore. Because if I go to, say, Itoya, I mean, going back to this seasoned fountain pen fan, if I go to Itoya, there's very little that is surprising to me. I've tested pretty much everything Sailor has, Pilot has, Platinum has, and I'm not saying that with some bizarre sense of accomplishment. I mean that I kind of miss the early days of this hobby, when everything was new and exciting, and I wanted to try everything. I didn't know how any of the nibs performed and the different models and so on. I have that again now with ballpoints. I don't know the difference between Acroball and Jetstream. I don't know the difference between like low viscosity ballpoints and gel inks, and how they perform, and the different brands and so on. And I really enjoy exploring this now, and also enjoy the fact that it's so ridiculously cheap that I can go into like a stationery store and I spend a few $100 and I get like a whole bunch of pens, and they're also fun to try out. So I haven't stopped using fountain pens. I have a bunch of them inked up. I'm going to be using fountain pens for a long time, I believe, but I'm not like a fountain pen purist anymore.
Well, I've actually got several ballpoint pens myself, ballpoint rollerball pens, and like you, I use them to fill out whatever waybills and stuff like that. I personally really enjoy the tactile turn side click. They're mostly metal pens, really heavy pens, but I bought one from good friend Hey Matthew on the internet, and this is some kind of like a nebula pattern, and it's got like it's got these little ridges etched or machined into it. Feels really, really good, and I'm just gonna that's so satisfying. I believe this is titanium, but it's it's pretty cool. It looks great. It's got everything I want in a fountain pen except for the actual technology part. It's beautiful, interesting to look at. And then something that I didn't realize I would like as much, but this Diplomat Arrow in their rollerball version is actually an incredible pen. It looks like a fountain pen, so it grips like a fountain pen. Incredibly smooth, and I have one of those Gravitas Ultim twist pens, and those are really nice as well. They obviously look really interesting. So yeah, I have definitely don't use them as much, but I do have some ballpoints and rollerballs as well. I think similar to our slight obsession with fountain pens, I think as long as it's interesting and it's nice to use, it's totally fair game for me.
Yeah, and there's something very convenient about being able to just write a few lines and then turn the page without having to wait for the ink to dry. I almost forgot how that was. So especially when you are like at the cafe and you're writing in your small like Bible-sized planner, it's nice to be able to turn pages fast.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you there. Actually, I've also I've been spending money, but I've also gone into something new, and I blame my friend from Hong Kong, and to an extent you as well. But I am working on a new website, and I wanted to take photos of products, and I thought that I should buy a camera. I have an iPhone. The iPhone camera is fantastic, but there are things that you can only do with an actual camera.
Interesting that you say that, because I remember not long ago you were talking about how for this, the only reason why anyone would buy like a standalone camera nowadays is for this whole like this like lifestyle aspect or experience. Like as for the camera functionality itself, yeah, an iPhone is everything you ever need.
I still agree that an iPhone is everything that you need, but I think unless you're going to spend a lot of time in like Photoshop or wherever, there are things that a camera can do, and I thought that I don't necessarily want to buy the most low end camera on the market, right? Because I still want to take good photos, or decent photos, let's say. But I didn't necessarily need to go to the best camera. So I thought, okay, maybe I'll just go somewhere in the middle, something mid-range. So I look on Mercari, because I thought, I could just buy a second-hand one. Oh my god, cameras are expensive. They're like, I think I was looking at a mid-range one, cost like $2,000 or something, $3,000. That's probably like cheap on the mid-range too. And I was like, okay, I can only buy an entry-level one.
Yeah, that has very recently changed. I remember just like 2 years ago, the one I bought most recently, which was a second-hand one, was like 80,000 yen, which is today is like $500-600. But I looked at the same one today on Amazon, like the second-hand prices, and it's almost double that. I'm not sure what's happening, but I know that some of the popular camera makers, they have problems keeping up with the production, and I think that may have driven up the prices.
I mean, it's crazy, but thankfully, I know somebody who works at a group company of a camera maker. They may or may not live in my house, but said, oh, you should get a Sony one. So I said, okay. So we end up getting this ZV-E10, which Sony advertises as a vlogging camera. I'm not gonna vlog, at least not yet, but it's quite nice. I quite like it, and I decided that I was gonna do things the hardest way possible. So I decided that I'm only gonna use manual focus, manual everything lenses, especially vintage lenses. I got my camera about 2 weeks ago. Somehow I have like 20 lenses now. It's bad, Jacob.
As in, did you buy them yourself, or did you get them?
No, I bought them myself from Mercari, from Yahoo Auctions. If you look at my Yahoo Auctions, they're all camera lenses now.
Oh right, okay. Well, I know that like up until fairly recently, when you thought about like third-party lenses for the Japanese camera makers, it was all like Tamron, Sigma, Tokyo. But nowadays, the Chinese lens makers have really stepped up their game. So you have a TT Artisan and Laowa and 7 Artisans and like Venus Optics. They make most of them of Viltrox. Most of them are manual focused, but some of them are quite good and a fantastic value for money.
Yeah, I'm going a little bit older than that. I'm going like Industar, Jupiter. I'm getting some old Canon lenses. I'm really into these old Canon lenses. And the Industars, they cost me like 6,000 yen, 5,000 yen. And what's the natural next progression is to take apart the camera lens and put it all back together, right? So I've done that.
Oh Jesus!
Yeah.
Jesus, of course you did that.
Yeah,
I would never do that. That's if you get dust, Jesus.
Yeah, I've taken apart these Carl Zeiss Jena zebras, Instar. I just took apart a Chiyoko yesterday. I'm sanding off. So they're pretty bad conditions. Sanding off the rust, revealing that brass inside, and I'm gonna put together like this two-toned camera lens. But like you and ballpoint pens, for me, something that's really interesting is really learning something new, and it feels great to be a noob again. Right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I'm still using my pens, but I'm finding a different way to use them. I'm finding them as a photography subject, and in that way, I'm rediscovering the pen aspect, but through a different, excuse my pun, through a different lens. So it's there we go. There we go. Dad jokes galore. But yeah, it is really, really fun, and I think the camera, it's very mechanical. I actually don't know how to use a modern lens. I tried some modern lenses. I own one modern lens, and for me, it's very strange that you have to change the aperture on the device itself. That makes no sense to me. So I'm just trying to not use them at all. But for me, it's a very tactile experience. And then it's giving me different ideas on how I want to use my pens in that different light. So I'm just learning about focal lengths, and I have a couple of macro tubes that I'm using to take pictures of small details. But it's very fun. It's what can I say? It's good to be a noob again.
Yeah, it is. I know exactly what you mean about that. And modern phone cameras have this amazing computational photography. Like they manage to get like a blue sky on a bright day, which you can almost not get with a normal camera unless you compose two images together. That's all done automatically in a phone camera. But it also means you're just along for the ride. You have a limited creative control unless you use one of those manual pro camera apps. So it's more fun to have full creative control over the whole photography process, and that allows you to do things that you cannot really do with a fully automatic system. So that I completely understand that, and it's a lot of fun to learn about it. So yeah.
And I'm learning a lot of history about it, which is really interesting. Like the history of the way that the lenses, I think if you think about a modern camera maker today, they're all Japanese, right? Pretty much if you want to buy a camera, you're buying a Japanese camera. But obviously that wasn't the case, 20 years ago, even 30 years ago. I'm having a lot of fun with these Soviet lenses. And I was surprised because I turned all the automatic settings off, and I was surprised, oh my goodness, my photos look so dark. And then if I open up the aperture, nothing is in focus. So I have really small depth of field, and it's, I'm learning a lot about this. But I also learned that the iPhone camera is amazing. It's amazing. If you want a picture that looks like what you see, the iPhone camera is really good.
Yeah, except that there's a bit of that uncanny valley that you get with computational photography. It looks like a bit surreal, I think.
Yeah, too good. It's too good. But yeah, I think for our listeners, obviously this is, maybe we'll just start a camera podcast instead. But this is the reason why I bring this up is because there are so many ways to enjoy fountain pens. As we've seen through this gift guide, there's so many ways to interact with what we own, even if it means diving into a different hobby. And I think actually that's pretty much your story here with fountain pens too, right? Your true love is photography.
Yeah, I mean, I've been into photography for about 20 years. And when I came to Japan, I came here on a government scholarship, and I spent most of my scholarship money on cameras. Back in the day, it was a Nikon D50, if people still know what I was. And I went around, took photos, day and night, and uploaded on Flickr.com, which was, the photo sharing site, the popular one at the time. And I was also... It was just when Creative Commons became a thing. Larry Lessig's Creative Commons product that allowed people to have this easy to understand licenses on your photographies. You could upload photos with a certain license that allows certain usage, and then people could go to Flickr and then just search for photos that had a permissive enough license for your intended use. And because of that, I found my photos being used everywhere, in like Encyclopedia Britannica, various books and publications.
That's crazy.
That was a lot of fun. So yeah, I have had a lot of fun with photography over the years. Nowadays, because I move around less than I did before, I think that's partially why I've become more into product photography, because you don't, even if you're stuck at home, you can still do photography when you do product photography. And if you remember, during previously at the Wagner events, I brought all kinds of like studio photography stuff. And I would borrow a table, and I ran around to Morizan and others and borrowed his pens and took photos. I had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, and it's great. It's great. So I think the moral of the story here is just think outside the box and interact with your pens in different ways. I think there's a lot of things to do here.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Even with just your iPhone, right? Even with just your iPhone.
Yeah, and that sort of ties into something else. I think you cannot tell where people are on their photography journey based on what they're talking about. When they start out, they're excited about their camera, they talk about cameras, and then after a while they talk about glass. And then when they get more experience, they start talking about shaping light. So things like, tripods, phone boards, gobos, flags, and so on. And I think once you learn how to really shape and control light, it doesn't really matter what camera you use, as long as you get your light correct. And if you don't get your light correct, then no camera can help you.
So it doesn't matter what camera you use anyway.
Yeah, you have workflow benefits, right? So certain cameras make it easier to upload photos, and for video there's different, right? So if you want to do 4K, if you want to do log video and so on, then that becomes a real difference. But if you want to do like product photos, I think you can achieve I don't think it matters as much whether you use like a camera phone or like a fancy Fuji camera or whatever it may be, as long as you have a really good light setup.
Yeah, but I bet you're the dad that brings that zoom lens to the Undokais.
Well, but all dads do that, and that's the reason why I needed one of those telezoom lenses, because that is like a mandatory, right? You can't go to an Undokai without recording it, because that is the expectation that you do that.
Yeah, Undokai is a sports fair.
Yeah.
Anyway, shall we close it up with some news?
Sure.
So, Fine Writing International, I saw this yesterday as well. They've released a new pen that they call the Scepter, and this is really an improved version of the Parker Vacuumatic model. So this is like a pump piston, and they call it vacuum filling, which I suppose the principle behind it is vacuum filling, but then again, so is a piston. But it really is, in pen terms, it's a pump filler. So you open up the back, and there's this button, and you press the button a few times, and you fill the pen. There is a Pen BBS pen that does something very similar as well, I believe. The 500.
Ah, yes. Okay, I didn't realize that this was the same kind of filling system. I was a bit confused, because we talked about Fine Writing International's like teaser stories before, and it looked like a piston filler, and now it looks slightly different. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, but it's the mechanism is hidden behind a blind cap, and you just press it a few times. It's pretty common in some vintage models, obviously the most famous being the Parker Vacuumatic, but Omas also did one of these with a fixed knob, and the Toma that I have is fairly similar to this as well. So I'm glad that Fine Writing is showing off their potential. I think the pen looks great. I'm very happy. I think I've said this previously on the podcast in the very early episodes, but I think Fine Writing International is probably the best quality pen maker in Taiwan. Over Laban and maybe Mr. Cypress, or now just Cypress, can go toe to toe with him. But even the Makie stuff, I think Fine Writing International is better.
That was a hot take right there.
I don't know if it's a hot take or not.
Because I can think of other pen makers like the Twisby and Opus and various others.
I think Fine Writing is they make better pens than Twisby, and they make better pens than Opus. Twisby is it's not on the same price range, so let's not talk about that. Although the Bronze Ages, they were pretty much in the same price range. Opus, they again make different pens, but I think the trims, the finish, I'm a Fine Writing International stan, so I'm excited to see where they're going to go with this.
So what I'm wondering, I mean, this is me wearing like a grumpy hat. Pen makers like, Onoto, they figured out how to make some of these filling systems like a century ago. What is the difficulty in recreating them nowadays? Do you have to make something different today? Do you have to make something that suits your particular like pen design, or do you have to avoid patterns? So what is the challenge in developing, say, a piston or a vac filler or a pump filler today?
The only challenge in my mind is cost. Because the technology is there. It's very simple. Anybody can use it. But are the customers going to pay, a double or a triple premium for that? So cost, and the other challenge is user knowledge.
Right, but then Twisby has managed to lower the cost of their piston fillers. So it seems possible then. So so it's more about manufacturing efficiency and cost control than actually any like engineering challenge and trying to make something that works.
Yeah, and Twisby, they own their own factory, so they don't have to worry too much about the cost over there. But yeah, I would say definitely machining the parts, depending on whether you're injection molding it or boring a hole into the material, that's very different. If you're injection molding it, it's much easier, but if you're machining it, then it's much more challenging to get a completely smooth surface, especially on the inside. So it depends on how it's constructed, but even that is not that difficult as long as you throw money at it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Next one, Pilot Limited Edition Capless, a yearly limited edition. This is like, I don't even know how many years they've done it. This pen looks to be pretty popular. You did a post on this.
Yeah, this is the one called Hana Shobu, and it was released, was it on 1 week ago? Roughly 1 week ago, and it seems to be sold out everywhere now. And this is... This release is always Christmas for scalpers, right? In a sense that most pens nowadays, if you're not in Japan, you can still you can still buy them online if you're willing to go through buy Ian's and market and whatnot. But there are a few releases that can only be bought in actual brick and mortar stores, and this is one of those. So this is always something that sells out very quickly, and then not just the eBay ones, but even on America, like for the domestic markets, people are quickly reselling them for twice the price. which is a bit. I always wonder why they don't just make more of these, but there might be some reasoning behind that. But anyway, the pen itself is like a pink, purple, white gradient capless, and the name means like Japanese iris. It's like a flower motif, flower theme, and it's got a little bit of like sparkles, just like other capless models. And it comes in F and EF. And as far as like, it's almost hard to find out exactly what is the criteria which stores get to sell these pens, because it's not the same as Custom Kai, Custom Club. It seems to be stores that have like Pilot Hanbain, which is also a bit ambiguous to me. So I don't understand, for example, why Bonebox get to sell Neo Classic but not this one. I'm not sure if you have any theories on that.
Yeah, I do. The criteria is that the sales staff, there must be one sales staff that is seconded from Pilot, whereas the Custom Kai is more of a network of loyal retailers. So you could have a store like Shosaikan, who's part of the Custom Kai, sell Custom Kai products without a Pilot staff. But for example, the Tokyo Limited Edition inks, as well as these releases, you have to have actually somebody who is on the Pilot payroll. Yeah, I think going back to your point about scalpers and this pen, I think I do think that your assessment on the pricing. First of all, there are a lot of people reselling this pen, and sometimes that price is really, really wild. I 100% agree on that, but I don't think that it's reasonable for a buyer from outside of Japan to expect to pay retail price on these, just because they're so difficult to get. So I usually these end of year pens, I didn't go crazy last year on the Bamboo Forest, and I only started buying them because people asked me to. This year as well, I wasn't really planning on getting it, but a couple of people asked me to. So I went down to Itoya yesterday, and they're really enforcing this, one person, one pen thing. And then I was talking to Izumi, who's a very well-known reseller, and I asked him, hey, did you manage to get any of these pens? Because, in the event that I can't get them for people who ask me, maybe I have to, buy it at a higher price from Izumi. And he said, no, he went to Tokyo, Ikebukuro, Marunouchi, Nihonbashi, Yokohama, Kawasaki. He went literally all over the place. He probably spent like $100 on traveling alone, and he was able to get 2 pens. So I do think that to a certain extent, if you're a foreign buyer and asking a friend to buy one of these pens in Japan, it's probably not super fair to expect at a retail price. But I think if you are a Japanese buyer, then you're probably really frustrated that that these are getting snapped up and they're sold out at a lot of the stores. So I know Itoya still has them, and I know that they some of the other retailers are planning a restock. But I think, how much was it this time? 33,000? Like 35,000? I don't remember exactly what the price is.
Yeah, 33 something else, like $240. But I mean, my point is not that the retailers should sell it at cost price out of goodness of their heart. That's not my point. My point is that I think it's unfortunate that the legit retailers like Nagasawa, it's unfortunate that they cannot sell this directly to customers, because some of those retailers, they do sell overseas, and I think if they could sell this pen overseas, then this would solve the problem, right?
Yeah, but this would also sell out way faster.
But that goes back to my first point, which is about why is the production so low? Once they come up with a model, the design, I mean, there must be a fixed cost there. Why isn't there in Pilot's interest to produce more of these?
Well, I agree with you, and I think this whole concept is weird because it's like, it's a present if you take one of our sales staff into your store, right? Like, it's like a present to themselves. In a way. And I agree. I think they could probably open this up to the Custom Kai stores.
Yeah.
I think it is definitely unfortunate that they have this really strange and archaic rule from, I don't even know when. But but I think that given that it is the situation, it's really hard to find these. It's really hard to find these. I don't even know if I'll be able to get all of the ones that have been asked of me. So, if you do see this, it is unfortunate, but you should probably expect, in my opinion, about like a $350, $360 range. Which, if you look at the Coral Red Capless, which is the Capless limited edition for this year, that's available worldwide, that's a $300 pen. So, considering shipping and everything, it's probably not an unfair price.
Yeah, but it is a 50% markup. So.
Yeah, but if you're willing to pay a $300 for a Capless from Pilot, from an official retailer out in the West, right? I think it's not unappetizing, unless you're really looking to game the exchange rates, which that's like going into gray market area, right? I think it's a difference between, are you buying from a eBay seller that has a really good price, or are you going to buy from a retailer who's selling to you at MSRP?
Yeah, I just saw it on Mercari for 55,000 yen.
That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, that's almost 100%, and probably going to go up from here. It's like Pilot is teasing its customers. Hey, look at this really nice pen. Only like 5 of you can buy it.
The Wish pen was so good. The Wish pen was so good. I'm still thinking about that pen, and I just wish they bring this creativity to their other pens. I mean, I understand that it's a brass body with lacquer on it, but can we do something interesting for our resin body stuff as well? I don't know.
That's true. That's true, and but it probably tells you something about the popularity of Capless VP compared to other models.
Yeah, and then especially this one, right? Because I think the regular LEs, they don't really sell out that fast. Like the Core Red, I'm not seeing too much buzz about that. But this one is always like, there's a fervor.
Yeah, that's true. So before this one, there was a Bamboo Forest, which I didn't think was that exciting. And before then, there was Wish, which was this like smash hit. And then Azure, I can't remember the one before Azure, what the name of that one was.
I don't remember either. I don't even know if there was one, but if there was, I'm pretty sure it was very popular as well. All right, shall we close out for the day?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, thanks a lot, everybody. If you've made it this far, please consider sharing the podcast with somebody that you know. I haven't been seeing Reddit threads, so maybe consider sharing it to Reddit. Share it to Instagram, Facebook, wherever you prefer to exist. And with that being said, I think that's all. My name is CY. You can find me on my website at tokyostationpens.com, on Instagram and TikTok at tokyostationpens, and on Twitter at tokyostationmnh for however long that will continue to last.
And my name is Jacob, and I'm Fudo Fan on Instagram, TikTok, elsewhere.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.